Okay. So hello, everyone. Looks like we've got a pretty good turnout so far this evening. Thanks so much for sharing your Thursday night with us. We appreciate your time and that you're here. I think we're going to get started in just a minute. So we've got a pretty good turnout, so maybe we'll get started in just 1 second. Oh, I see we already have one member with their hand raised. I'm not sure if they had a question. Unfortunately, you're showing up as Zoom user for me, so I can't call on you by name. Should we ask you to unmute yourself? Hi, did you have a question?
No, I want to be first to make comment about the sales tax.
Okay, great. Well, you're in the queue then. Fantastic. Okay, well, it looks like I said, we've got a pretty good turnout. Thank you all so much for sharing your Thursday night with us. And I think we can get things started. So again, thank you for joining us for the Transportation Authority's Town Hall on a new expenditure plan for the existing half-cent transportation sales tax. As I said, my name is Michelle Beaulieu, and I'm the project manager for this effort at the Transportation Authority. And I'd like to start by introducing Transportation Authority Chair Supervisor Mandelman, who is going to make a few welcoming remarks. So thank you, Chair.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And I want to thank all of our members of the EPAC, some of whom are here tonight, and our Transportation Authority staff for all of your terrific work on this, especially Michelle Beaulieu, whose name I consistently mispronounce, but who nonetheless does great work for us. So I am the chair of the County Transportation Authority, in addition to being the supervisor from District 8, representing Castro, Noe Valley, Glen Park, Diamond Heights, Twin Peaks, a little bit of the Mission, Dubois Triangle. For members of the public who have decided to give us some of their time this evening, great thanks. We do, as I said, have a great expenditure advisory committee comprised of folks from every neighborhood in San Francisco, from lots of different backgrounds, from business, from labor, from nonprofit, big business and small business. But it is important for regular old folks from the neighborhoods to be able to make themselves heard as well. Our goal is to hear your transportation priorities, as Michelle said, for a spending plan that will guide the next 30 years of Transportation Authority investments. You probably all know this, but San Francisco has had a half-cent sales tax for transportation spent by the Transportation Authority for over 3 decades now. It's our primary local funding source for transportation, and it generates about $100 million a year. Most of that money has gone toward capital improvements, things like new protected bike lanes and safer crosswalks, street paving and upgrades, and maintenance for Muni, BART, and ferry service, as well as acquisition of new cars, new systems, investments in major regional projects like the California high-speed rail to the Bay Transit Center, and electrifying Caltrain service, and about 10% has gone to funding Muni's paratransit program for folks with disabilities and limited mobility. We are going, I hope, to go to the ballot with this renewal in November. If we're going to do that, we need to have a plan that reflects the values and priorities of San Francisco, all of San Francisco's residents, and especially San Francisco's voters, who will have to vote to approve this. It will make a real impact, we hope and believe, on people's lives, and will fund a new generation of citywide investments in safe, reliable, and sustainable transportation, access to jobs, school, and essential services. And how we spend this money also helps determine our ability to draw down other sources of funds from the state and federal government, which is very, very important. As I said, we have a great expenditure plan advisory committee that has been meeting regularly since September, and the input that you members of the public who are not on the advisory committee provide will help inform their recommendations to the Transportation Authority Board later this spring. And I think that's about all I have to say, other than just to express great thanks to all the folks, again, from the TA and our EPAC who've gotten us this far, and to our public participants for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I really appreciate you being here. Next, I'd like to introduce a few other members of our team. We have our Executive Director, Tilly Chang, is here. We have our Chief Deputy Director, Maria Lombardo, our Deputy Director for Policy and Programming, Anna Lafort, Director of Communications, Eric Young. We have Brittany Chan from our Communications Department, and Kaylee Lyons, also from our Policy and Programming Division. So we are all here to help answer questions that you may have and to get your feedback on this proposal. And I did want to note, as the chair stated, the Transportation Authority Board did establish a committee to support this effort. So I wanted to see, I saw a couple of members of our Expenditure Plan Advisory Committee here today. So I just wanted to give them an opportunity if they want to wave or say hello. Thank you all for being here today as well. So we're hosting this town hall seeking your input on the draft new expenditure plan that we are working on. And I want to note, this is not a final plan, and we're really looking for your opinions on the proposed programs to help build that final plan. I should also say that we have a raffle going as part of this event. And at the end of the presentation, we'll circulate a link where you can enter your email address if you'd like to enter the raffle. And finally, we will be posting this presentation online after the event. And as you may have noticed, we are recording the event as well. So here are just a few logistics for using Zoom. For those of you who are new to the platform, the meeting is going to start with a presentation from the Transportation Authority about the current draft of this plan. And then we'll move on to Q&A, where we can take clarifying questions, and a discussion, which is really the meat of this event, where we're looking for your feedback on the proposal. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the Transportation Authority, we thought we'd start with a quick introduction to our roles. We are a separate agency from the city and from the SFMTA or Muni, though we work really closely with them and with other transportation agencies in the city. Our board is the same as the Board of Supervisors, and our mission is to make travel safer, healthier, and easier for all. And to that end, we plan, fund, and deliver transportation projects to improve travel choices for residents, for commuters, and for visitors throughout San Francisco. And one of our really important functions is administering the half-cent sales tax for transportation. And this sales tax, as the chair mentioned, has been in place since 1990. And the current expenditure plan has been in place since 2003. And the expenditure plan is what tells voters how the sales tax funds will be spent, who can receive the funds, and how the program will be administered. So to date, the sales tax has helped the SFMTA replace their entire fleet of buses, of light rail vehicles, and paratransit vehicles. And it's also supported the regional transit providers as well. So for example, sales tax funds helped BART connect its Balboa Park station with a new Muni platform, and it paid for improved lighting and signage in the area. And it's also helped rehabilitate Caltrain's locomotives. The sales tax is also an important source of funding for paratransit operations, as the chair noted. It serves San Francisco seniors and people with disabilities. And the sales tax has also helped rebuild the Presidio Parkway approach to the Golden Gate Bridge and funded paving projects, upgrading and installing new traffic signals and signs, really in every district of the city. And there are other types of projects that have been funded in every corner of the city, from bike lanes and sidewalks to street trees, traffic calming projects, which can improve safety for all of the users of the streets. And the sales tax is really primarily used to fund these kinds of capital projects, but it can fund both the long-term improvements and some of the quick build projects that you might see in your community, which include the projects that are mostly paint and the flexible soft hit posts, those flexible plastic posts that you might see on the street. So what are we doing now? So we are currently planning to bring a new 30-year expenditure plan to the voters of San Francisco in 2022. And this would keep that same half-cent sales tax rate for transportation. So there would be no increase to the sales tax rate, but it would establish a new set of programs and projects for the use of those funds over the next 30 years. And there's a number of reasons why we want to go to the voters in 2022. All but one of the major capital projects, the really big projects, are either complete or under construction. And many of the programs of funding, they're anticipated to run out of funds in the next few years. So that includes things like Muni vehicle repair and replacement and facility maintenance or traffic calming. By establishing this new plan, it'll allow us to replenish those ongoing programs, continuing to see the benefits of the programs, continuing project delivery, and maintaining jobs, which is really crucial to our city's COVID economic recovery. There are also some new and emerging priorities that can be included in a new expenditure plan. So that might include the next generation of major capital projects, upgrading Muni's train control system, just as a few examples. And this can really cue the city up for competitive funding sources by providing seed funding or local match, which is often required. So I'm going to hand this over to Kaylee Lyons now to talk a little bit more about what we're working on for this new expenditure plan.
Thanks, Michelle. So we wanted to provide an overview on the outreach that we're doing as we develop this new expenditure plan. So we've started by drawing on outreach that's been done for other efforts, such as Connect SF and the San Francisco Transportation Plan, as well as doing outreach that's specific to the new expenditure plan. We've conducted some one-on-one interviews with community-based organizations, and we've also held 3 focus groups, one each in Spanish, Chinese, and Russian. And these were in partnership with trusted community-based organizations, and we're focused on seeking feedback from monolingual communities who may not typically engage in transportation planning. We're also holding town halls like this one, and thank you so much for spending part of your Thursday night with us. And we have an online survey that's available in multiple languages. And the survey is set to close on February 4th. So we'll put a link into the chat tonight so that you can share it with your friends and take it yourselves. And then we also have, we're also making presentations to any groups that are interested. And overall, we're hearing a lot of different things. There are varied needs and desires from different communities based in different parts of the city. Next slide. And so the draft expenditure plan was put together to help the city see varied benefits to address those different needs across the city. And it will help to deliver safer, smoother streets and more reliable transit, as well as reduce congestion and improve air quality. Next slide, thanks. And the draft expenditure plan includes $2.4 billion for the transportation system over the next 30 years. And we'll go through some of the proposed programs over the next few slides. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, we're really looking for your feedback on this proposal. A lot of what's being recommended would continue to fund ongoing programs from our existing expenditure plan, such as traffic calming or street resurfacing, but we've also incorporated some new programs as well. So I'll hand it back over to Michelle to begin discussing the proposed programs.
Great, thanks, Kaylee. So to start things off, to make transit safer and more reliable, one of the things we're proposing funding for is new Muni vehicles and facilities to maintain those vehicles, such as the one that you see here, and funding for other maintenance and rehabilitation projects for Muni, for BART, and for Caltrain. And it's really essential to invest in maintaining our transit infrastructure to prevent breakdowns and delays and make sure the system runs reliably. The draft new expenditure plan also would fund improvements to the transit system to provide direct benefits to riders that they can see. So things like improvements to stations and bus stops, accessibility improvements like new elevators, things that can make our systems more usable for seniors, for people with disabilities, people with strollers, etc. There would also be some funding for bigger transit investments in the draft plan, which are really about making system-wide improvements that ease crowding and improve reliability and increase the rider capacity, the number of people that Muni, BART, and Caltrain can all hold. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. So this includes things like red lanes for Muni, improvements to train control systems, or new vehicles to expand the size of the fleet. Prior to the pandemic, we saw that transit crowding was a really significant issue. And we know that as the economy recovers and the city's population grows over the next 30 years, we're really going to need these investments to accommodate new trips. And as Kaylee mentioned, one of the benefits of the proposed plan would be safer, smoother streets. And this draft plan includes funding for street resurfacing, as well as for bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements, traffic calming, and other types of benefits that will really be for all of the users of our streets. And these programs would continue to fund some of the really successful programs from the existing expenditure plan, which funded things like the crosswalk that you see here on Clement, or the bike lanes on Folsom, and new street repavement really across the city. I'm going to hand it back to Kaylee now to talk about the rest of the programs in the draft expenditure plan.
Thanks. So staying with streets and freeways for a moment, the draft plan also includes planning, community engagement, and project development for transformative multimodal improvements that are designed to reconnect communities and repair the harm created by past freeway and street projects. Some examples are redesigning major interchanges or adding new connections across freeways. And we can see two examples here with the Presidio Parkway and redesigning Octavia Boulevard after tearing down the Central Freeway. And safety improvements where freeway ramps touch down onto city streets are also included. And we're supporting seniors and people with disabilities by continuing to fund paratransit, which provides transit for those that have difficulty accessing public transit on their own. And we know that older adults are the fastest growing age group in San Francisco, with nearly 30% of residents slated to be age 60 or older by 2030. Next slide, thanks. And there would also be a focus for community-based neighborhood scale and citywide planning, as well as funding to help implement some of the recommendations that come out of the community-based planning efforts. And projects here typically address street safety, improve access to transit, and encourage walking and biking, among others. And then we also have programs to address climate change, reduce congestion and crowding, and improve air quality by shifting trips to sustainable modes and shifting travel to less crowded times. So this may include promoting walking and biking to school with Safe Routes to School programs, a project like BART Perks that incentivizes riders to shift their trips to less crowded times, or the Emergency Ride Home program, which provides you with a trip home at the end of the day if you took transit, for example, but now need to get home immediately for a sick family member. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Michelle.
Great, thanks, Kaylee. Okay, so everyone, that was quite a bit of material that we just put in front of you, a rundown of the full draft expenditure plan that we've been working on. We're happy to take any clarifying questions about what we've just presented. And I wanted to put these up here because really what we're here for is to hear from all of you what you think of the proposed programs, and if there's anything else you'd like to see included. So I think at this time, we can start taking questions and comments. I see if people can use the raise hand function, that would be great. And I see, oh, we already have 4 folks with their hands raised. So I'll start calling on people as I saw their hands go up. So we're going to start with Richard Rohrman and then go to Howard Wong and Heidi. So Richard, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Richard Rohrman, and I live in the Richmond district, where some people don't realize the Richmond district is part of San Francisco. And I am absolutely against giving money to the Caltrain extension. These people can change the trains in Millbrae. This is another debacle program. And I want the money used for programs in the Richmond district. People are dying in car accidents, and MTA doesn't have the money to fix them. And the other, I'm giving away my age, but I voted for BART, and one of the promises that BART was going to come out to the Richmond. So before money goes to Caltrans, the money should go to BART and put high speed out on Geary Street. Let the downtown business set up a special assessment district and let the people who are going to benefit from the Caltrains extension. You know, we need the money out in the Richmond. We got some of that money that the supervisors give out, but we didn't have enough money to do the safety improvements. So I think you better change your priorities if you want this to pass. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we can go on to our next attendee. So I see Howard Wong, then it'll be Heidi, then David Singer. Go ahead, Howard.
Hello, Howard Wong. I'd like the focus on neighborhoods. I think that's a very important issue. Over the last decade, despite the billions and billions of dollars being spent on transit, we've actually had, I think, service reductions and have declining ridership, transit ridership mode. So I think the focus on neighborhoods and service for people is a very, very important part of your plan. However, despite that being said in the past, we do see a lot of funding going to big infrastructure projects that have marginal benefits when the real need is in the neighborhoods and on a daily basis and the comfort and well-being of riders. In 30 years, I also feel that there's an opportunity to start thinking about and designing for new transit and transportation technology. Some of it's already existing, but we haven't really implemented it. We've started some things here like reliable digital signage and schedules. We've obviously see some cities testing or implementing or actually using automated vehicles. We see micro automated electric buses in some areas and some office parks and limited use, but those are already existing. So when you think about 30 years, we're thinking about a really transformation in mobility, that there should be a certain amount of funding dedicated to starting to understand how that will be integrated into our transit systems, hopefully in 5 years, perhaps, if not sooner. So there are things in other cities that are being looked at that I think we should consider. Free transit, free or limited free transit loops in neighborhoods, and focus on service with many of the new technologies available. So anyway, I think we should be innovative in this development of a plan. So there should be a much more futuristic outlook. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I do want to note we have some funding in this plan that would be eligible for pilot projects to test out new ideas and technologies, like some of the things that you raised, Howard. So thank you for those comments. Okay, next I had Heidi, then David Singer, and then I saw Guido Van Ryn, then Joni Van Ryn, and then Robert Fruckman. So starting with Heidi.
Hi, so I just wanted to reiterate the support for transit into the neighborhoods because I live in the Western Addition and I feel like there's a lot of drivers going very quickly through my neighborhood and that's a problem. Like street resurfacing and traffic congestion both feel like a bad response. Traffic congestion is one of the only effective ways to slow down cars, especially without SFPD enforcement. I also wanted to make a note that I believe multiple transit agencies are paying SFPD, while SFPD is actively undoing the work of the transit agencies, such as the illegal parking on Market in the loading zones. That like, how many years of negotiation went into Better Market Street and the current plan, and then they just undo it and ignore it? I don't understand how we should expect further community input or planning to help when it's going to be counteracted like that, or disregarded. Like, so that's just, I guess, my main comment on those points. I'd also like to ask for equity for transit and bikes, as we get increasing numbers of transit riders, and the percentage of trips and percentages of cars, or percentage of car-free households increase in San Francisco. We should be getting equal amount of street for those things. I'm pretty sure 99% of streets right now are car full, and the investments are heavily in favor of cars. We need to be let's say 20% of our streets being entirely car free. Buses are fine, bikes are fine, pedestrians are fine, would be great. Sharing would be great if it can be done safely, but I think that's on the cars to prove, not the at this point, right? Like, we've been, how many years have we gotten Vision Zero promises, and then, you know, I got hit by a car, and unless I go to the hospital, it doesn't even count towards your record. So that's a problem, I guess. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Okay, folks, so I think just because we do have quite a few people on the queue, I think we're going to try to limit people to 2 minutes if possible, but we can come back to people if there's more time after we get through everyone. So like I said, I have David, then Guido, then Joni, then Robert in the queue. So go ahead, David.
Hi, yeah, my name's David Singh. I live in South of Market. Two things very quickly. San Francisco is famous for being dangerous to walk in, frustrating to driving, and have slow Muni. And these can all be addressed if we were to make capital improvements in coordinated traffic management that observed where the traffic was, tried to let cars be synchronized on lights so they're not tempted to speed and run lights, which makes it safer for pedestrians and more pleasant for everybody. And coordinated traffic management so that the Muni buses will actually flow on schedule. San Francisco is famous for the Muni buses being horrible on their timetables. The other is we have to recognize that bricks and mortar retail with drive-to parking and shopping is a dying model for how cities live. And we have to work out a way to make neighborhoods pleasant for people to be in on foot, on bicycles, with mixed use retail, restaurants, coffee shops, libraries, and so on. We badly need to get the cars off the streets to make that pleasant. And the way to do that is by some free loop shuttles in important neighborhoods where we want to achieve that. And these are two big capital improvements that will make a quality of life change for everybody in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Okay, next up, Guido, then Joni, then Robert.
Mute. There we go. Couple of questions. One is how federal funding comes into play. Is there a funding sharing program going on? But the even bigger question is, there's some major projects going on in the west of Twin Peaks area. Near City College, there's some major housing programs. In let's see, it would be Stonestown. There's some major projects being developed. Also in Park Merced, there's some major housing projects. And the big question is, transportation support would be necessary for every one of those locations. And I'm afraid it's very minimal as it is. So what part of this program deals with those kinds of issues? Okay, that's enough for now.
Oh, thank you for that. So on your first question on how federal funding comes into play, there's a lot of different types of federal funding that are available for transportation projects. And some of that has been recently been increased with the recent federal infrastructure bill. But you know, our total needs across the city are really much higher than any single source or even a few of these sources combined can address. So for example, there's going to be an infusion of additional funding for transit maintenance projects, which is going to be very helpful, but that federal funding requires local match dollars that can be provided by something like this local sales tax, which is why it's so important to include a mix of funding sources for different types of projects. So federal funding is super important, state funding is super important, and local funding a lot of times is really what makes us able to take advantage of those other funding sources. On the major projects, a question about neighborhoods that are seeing a lot of development that in the pipeline, such as the Stonestown area and New York City College and Park Merced that you mentioned. One of the things that we have increased funding for in this plan is for neighborhood scale planning that can help identify transportation challenges and potential solutions to queue up projects to be eligible for funding from this measure, potentially federal funding, as you just asked about. And so we have a real focus on that in this plan that hopefully can help address that in individual neighborhoods. Because this is a 30-year plan, for the most part, we don't have those specific project areas named because it needs to be flexible for 30 years. So instead we have things like the neighborhood transportation program, where a project looking at the areas that you brought up today would be eligible for funding. So really great questions. Thank you for that. I think next up in our queue, we had Joni, then Robert.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Joni.
Hi. Thank you, Michelle. I want to thank the Transportation Authority for all of their work and for providing this opportunity for residents to tell you about our ideas. And just thank you again for making this available. There was a slide that you showed on the draft plan, and it showed that paratransit would receive 8.6 of the total funding. This was the same as it was in the previous Prop K. And I would like to support what Supervisor Mandelman said, and that it should be an increase in 10%. He mentioned that in his opening remarks, and I would like to second that and say that the 10% is needed because of the additional growth in the senior population by the year 2030. So I support that.
Thank you, Joni. And thank you, Joni, for your time commitment to our Expenditure Plan Advisory Committee, and really appreciate you coming out tonight too. So for folks on the call, this is something that we're discussing. So what you're seeing today is a preliminary draft proposal that was put together by staff, and we are working on the details with the Expenditure Plan Advisory Committee, which includes the input from this town hall and other engagement efforts that we've been doing over the last couple of months. So we'll take all this feedback to them for a discussion, including your comment about increasing funding for paratransit. So thanks, Joni. Okay, next up I saw Robert and then Pat.
Hi, yeah, my name is Robert Fruckman. I live in District 5. So I don't have a car, so I pretty much extensively rely on public transit or micromobility or Uber and Lyft if that's really the only option. So I guess my biggest priority is I would like to see Muni service improved. Like I'd like to see headways greatly reduced. Like I don't want to have to worry about when I can get if I can get around by public transit. I want to be sure that there will always be a bus if I really need one, and pretty much at all hours, because service hours have been reduced too. I'm generally in favor of like more slow streets. I love the Page slow street. Also, I guess one big thing I'd like to see is free Muni. I think that's the big equity issue, is the increase in Muni fares over the past few decades. And I guess I would also like to see SFCTA explore if like we can have a a city funded like bike share or scooter share service. Like I think if we're going to have, like I think I really love like the Lyft bike share, but I really love for my money to be going to the city rather than a private corporation for bikes. I think that's pretty crucial infrastructure. So those are really my priorities.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate your feedback. Okay, next up I had Pat, and then I see Michael Spitzner.
Hi, my name is Pat, and I live in Lower Pack Heights. And when we weren't in COVID, and hopefully when we get back to normal, I would walk down Franklin Street all the way to Market in order to get to work on Market Street. And I've been hit once, and I've been almost hit, I can't count how many times as I make that route. And most of the time, it's because people are making a right on a red, or on a one-way street, they're making a left on a red. I don't know why we don't have more no right on reds or more no right on lefts, other than my assumption is you guys want to keep traffic flowing. But you know, maybe we don't need traffic to flow so fast, and it would be better if we had more of those type of designations. Is that possible?
Thank you for that comment. So I will admit I'm not sure what the regulations are around implementing a restriction like that. That is something that the SFMTA would be charged with. I'm fairly confident, but that's something that we can, I can look into. And if you want to send us your contact information, I can get you a little bit more information about the process for something like that. So you can send it, if you can send it in the chat to either myself or anyone at the TA that you can send a chat to, that would be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, next up is Michael, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, Spitzner.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Yeah, Spitzner actually, but good try. My name is Michael Spitzner. I live in Noe Valley in District 8. So Supervisor Mandelman, very nice to see you again. And I noticed that Jacob Bintliff is also on the call. And Jacob, what a treat for me to be with you in 2 meetings on 2 nights in a row. I have 2 suggestions and 1 kind of general comment. First suggestion is, and to mirror what someone else said a moment ago, is slow streets. I live near Sanchez, one of the 4 remaining slow streets in the city, and I love our slow street. And I've gotten involved with a couple of neighborhood organizations that are working to make the slow street as great an opportunity as it can be. I see the slow street as a chance for San Francisco to really try something new, to create new models for community engagement and the use of shared spaces. And we're working right now on developing a communal sense of community guidelines for use of the slow street, trying to balance the needs of the people who live on Sanchez Street with the neighbors who live in the general area, and kind of converge on that street for recreation. And it's a bit of a burden in some ways on the actual residents. So I think we can use some help with signage, with beautification, and also with community organizing, particularly on this project of developing what we call the rules of the road, or the community guidelines, a set of behavioral guardrails, if you will, for how to use a slow street for the benefit of everyone. My second suggestion involves the Customer Information System, the CIS of Muni. This is what I used to think of as the Next Muni app on my phone. I used it and I loved it. I was a regular J rider before the pandemic. Haven't been back on the J in a while, but I look forward to it. And I really relied on the next Muni system. I found it to be extremely reliable, actually. I've heard a lot of people complain about it, but I thought it was great. I would go to my app. I had my my transit ticket on the app as well. I could buy them there, and it would tell me when the train was coming, and I can organize my day around the arrival of the train. I found it to be quite reliable. But about 18 months ago, in June of 2020, the Board of Supervisors authorized a program, an $88 million project to develop what they called the next gen customer information system, which I'm very excited about. I think it's a great project. Unfortunately, it is at least a year behind. And I think that we need some help in that area. I don't think we need more funding, but I do think we need more accountability. What they did is they hired a third party who specializes in this sort of thing, working with cities, and they've worked with cities all around the world. Frankly, I don't know who it is who is holding their feet to the fire. By they, I mean the third party company. But there obviously are some problems, and I don't know what they are. I would be happy to do anything I could as a citizen and as a writer to assist in this project. But I really do think that it would be great if the CTA could put some energy behind it and perhaps some funding if needed. My general comment, I'm sorry to take so much time, is I want to kind of underline what David Singer said a little while ago about brick and mortar retail being a dying model. If we're taking the 30-year time horizon to do our planning, I think that's very exciting. But one of the things that I think is going to happen over the next 30 years is that work from home is going to become a real common model. It arose out of COVID, but I think it's going to stay way beyond the pandemic. And I wonder to what extent the CTA is taking into account the effect of work from home. I think it will create a much more distributed sense of the workplace. I think I personally think that rush hour traffic and transit congestion are pretty much a thing of the past. I don't think we're ever going to go back to the same degree of rush hour congestion that we used to have, because so many people will be working from home, if not 100% of the time, a hybrid model that many high-tech companies in particular are adopting. So with distributed workplaces, less focus on downtown as a work location and as a transit destination during rush hours, what does that mean for transit in a modern city looking ahead for 30 years? I don't have the answers, but I think it's an important question, and I would hope that we're looking at it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, so to your last point about work from home, I will say, our agency is tracking the traffic and congestion in the city since the pandemic. It's available on our website. I don't know if one of our other team members can post the website to our COVID tracker for the members of for the attendees of this town hall to check out on their own time. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. And that's part of why the proposed draft expenditure plan is mostly programs and not specific projects, to kind of give that flexibility to the future, because we don't know what the city's needs are going to be in 10, 20, 30 years. So thank you for those comments. So I see one more hand up from Sheffield.
Hi, yes. I'm a little late, but thanks for having me. I just took the survey, and one thing that jumped out to me, there was a question on road repaving. And I think that's really important, but would love to see something, especially if the money's coming from the Transportation Authority, where that money is earmarked towards the active transportation network, or perhaps routes on which the buses run. And maybe part of the deal is if that money is spent, it's spent on those corridors and those projects to keep them at a much higher level. I'm someone with chronic pain, and I can only take buses on routes that have a PCI score above around an 85, 80, 85. So I'm very, it's very limiting how I can get around. And so anything that's done with this pot of money, it would be nice to see the transit first idea and ethos and values imbued into that pot of funding as well.
Great, thank you so much for that input. Okay, so I don't see any other hands raised right now. I apologize if I'm missing anyone. Transportation Authority staff, shout if I am missing someone. But if anyone, oh, I see one hand went up. Two, okay, Charles and then Fennel.
Hi, thank you. It took me a while to find the control to raise my hand.
No problem.
So first I'd like to go back to my colleague in Richmond who mentioned that he thought that some people didn't realize that it was part of San Francisco. I live in Mission Terrace, and I've had people several times tell me that they're in Daly City, but in fact, it's a mile south of our location. There's two things I want to bring up. One is that I feel that we should have never taken up streetcar tracks in the first place, and I realize that train is long since departed, but Supervisor Weiner some time ago said that we should never stop building rail in San Francisco. And I completely agree with that. I understand that that's a topic that will gore the ox of quite a few people because of the infrastructure involved. But San Francisco being such a compact city could really do to follow the mode of other great European cities and other cities around the world that have a robust and very efficient rail system to get us around from place to place. So that's just a comment. The other one is I've been on various committees and other boards in San Francisco for over 40 years on citizens advisory committees in my particular neighborhood around Balboa Park. And about 20 years ago, there was a program called the Better Neighborhoods Program that took the opportunity to look at large infrastructure changes in San Francisco. And they targeted 3 neighborhoods specifically. Now, of course, this is post-earthquake, so they were looking to take advantage of some opportunities to restructure the landscape. One of those was the ferry building. And of course, with the removal of the Embarcadero Freeway, that was a great opportunity, and that plan was realized. The other, as you pointed out earlier, was Octavia Boulevard, and another plan that was realized and is still in development. But the third was in this neighborhood, and that one never came to fruition. Now, I understand that we have a unique situation here because we have a confluence of transit that involves the federal government with Interstate 280, the BART district because of the BART station we have here, SFMTA because we have the Balboa rail yard here, and then just general, it's a very compact neighborhood and there's a lot going on. But several of those agencies have pointed out that the way things are built here now could not be built today because they're unsafe. The on and off ramps are unsafe. They're not engineered to current standards. We've had accidents, we've had errors, we've had all kinds of problems, but we have not had any solutions. So what I would like to end with is saying that I would like this committee to think on a grand scale. Fixing the problems we have in this neighborhood takes some grand thinking. One of the grandest was to put a deck over 280, which would have immense benefits. But unfortunately, we couldn't quite think big enough and it came down to money. But something like putting rail across San Francisco is also a big deal. And I think that if we started with laying out where rail would make most sense and engage in the neighborhoods now on what those routes would look like, when we finally get around in 20 or 30 years to building it, we'll have had some engagement and we'll have some buy-in and it will be an easier process. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments. I wanted to just mention 2 long-range planning efforts that are really part of one. So there's a Connect SF long-range planning effort going on right now It's an effort that's joint between our agency, between the SFMTA and the planning department. And they are working on a transit strategy and a streets and freeways strategy. And I think they're looking at exactly those kinds of big ideas. So I definitely recommend you check out Connect SF. I believe it's connectsf.org. The transit strategy, I believe, just wrapped up, but the streets and freeways study, I believe, will be wrapping up shortly. So that information for both of those should be on there. And I know that they address some of those big types of projects that you brought up. So thank you so much for that. Okay, next I have Fennel. And then if other folks weren't able to finish their thoughts earlier, feel free to raise your hands again. So go ahead, Fennel.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. I'm excited about this project. And I just wanted to put out a few ticklers as far as this is sovereign land, and that we also have to recognize that, you know, there's California Native Plant Society and also environmental justice work that's going on, and how that dovetails with the climate change goals. So in other words, you know, I think that there's an opportunity to really think about how we can be more regenerative in how we design these systems, and, you know, connecting with these powerhouses that we have that are very hyper-focused on, you know, recreating these habitats, which have been so devastated, and also supports other life forms like birds, bees, and butterflies, not just human movement, and, you know, marine life as well. There's that, right? So we need to create regenerative energy opportunities, and obviously active mobility plays a big piece of that, and making sure that the safe routes to school, the little ones who are so vulnerable, and the elders, that we have permanent fixtures in place. So the toolkit that we currently have as far as the definition of protected is extremely woefully insufficient. And so we need Jersey barriers, right? I mean, there's so many other standards globally right now. We're about 50 years behind. So I just find it so appalling that you can't just execute around that. As far as meeting that definition of a protected bike lane, or not even a bike lane, but it's active mobility, right? And then also on behalf of the Families for Safe Streets, you know, too many people are murdered and assaulted right now. And so again, getting away from like car-centric thinking, and really imagining how we can activate and energize and infuse these spaces, which have just become so degraded with the overconsumption on allocation towards car use. So Families for Safe Streets, too many people are getting murdered on a monthly basis. You know, the hours, you know, every 15 hours, someone's getting peeled off the sidewalk by traffic violence or assaulted. We have thousands of people each year assaulted because of traffic violence. It's appalling. And let alone like all the intimidation, as you know. That's just a constant fear, especially as a mother who lives in San Francisco for over 15 years, who's trying to get a son to school and also commute and work, and so on and so forth. So just like to kind of frame it around that. Take a look at Nature in the City. They're a nonprofit. If you don't know them, I highly recommend, in order to meet those climate action goals. A lot of it is about really, you know, kind of restoring and activating and regeneration. And I'd like you to think about it in those terms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I see Joni's hand up, and then we're getting close to the end of our time. So we'll probably wrap things up after Joni. So thanks, go ahead, Joni. Oh, you're still muted, Joni.
One of the things that the Expenditure Plan Committee has been looking at is equity, and how these very large pots of money are divided up throughout the city, and that everybody gets their fair share of this money and these projects. And I just want to confirm that those of us on the committee are looking at this very seriously, and that we really do feel that some neighborhoods have not received their fair share, and that some neighborhoods have really been almost forgotten, and that the EPAC, or the group that's working on this plan, we are doing our best to really look at equity in terms of fairness for all citizens in the city of San Francisco.
Thank you for that, Joni. I appreciate that context. Okay, so I think it's time we want to share the link to our raffle. So if folks would like to enter that. Oh, thank you so much, Brittany. I see she just put the link in the chat, as well as the link to this presentation if you'd like to check it out later. I'll check with my Transportation Authority colleagues if there's any remarks that anyone would make before we close this out. And I think I'll put up just this website link information. So if you are interested in learning more, you can visit our website, sfcta.org/expenditure plan, where you can find information about the Expenditure Plan Advisory Committee meetings and about our scheduled Community Advisory Committee and board meetings. And you can also email the whole team at expenditureplan@sfcta.org. So anyone from the Transportation Authority want to give a few final remarks in these last 2 minutes?
I think this is Maria Lombardo. Thank you to everyone for your time and wonderful input. We really appreciate it. Double duty EPAC members, gold star. Please reach out, anybody, if you have any follow-up. We'll be happy to get back to you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. Take care, everyone.